The day I got the terminal diagnosis, I decided I was done playing by the rules. I kidnapped the girl I'd been secretly in love with for 20 years. A month later, I got a call from the hospital. So, sorry, Mr. Carter, we seem to have mixed up your results. I looked over at Claire Miller, the girl I'd been holding captive for a month, who had already gained 5 pounds. I had some serious thinking to do. Chapter 1. My name is Alex Carter. I'm 22, completely unremarkable, and a recent college grad. If there's anything remarkable about me, it's that today I was handed a diagnosis for late-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor patted my shoulder, his face a mask of sympathy. Son, try to look on the bright side. Life, well, it always has an end. You got about 3 months left. Go eat whatever you want. I clutched the single sheet of paper, so thin yet heavier than a ton of steel, my mind a complete blank. The wind rustled the report, the sound like a mocking laugh at my short and pathetic life. My 22 years could be summed up in 2 words: be good. Listen to your parents. Study hard. No dating. Listen to your teachers. Follow the rules. Don't cause trouble. Listen to society. Find a stable job. Be a good citizen. I lived like a pre-programmed robot. The only bug in my code was Claire Miller. She was my childhood sweetheart, the girl I'd known since we were in diapers, the secret love I never dared to speak aloud. When she smiled, she had 2 faint dimples that could outshine the summer sun. She'd call me an idiot while snatching my homework, circling the important parts for me in red ink. When a couple of jerks corner me in an alley, she'd grab the nearest 2x4 and roar, "Who do you think you're messing with?" Sending them scrambling. I'd been in love with her for 20 solid years, but I'd never even managed to say, "I like you," because I was a coward. I was afraid of rejection, afraid of losing the friendship we had. I always told myself, just wait. Wait until you're more successful, until your job is stable, until you have a house and a car. But now I was out of time. I crumpled the diagnosis in my fist, my knuckles turning white. Blood rushed to my head, and a thought, completely and utterly insane, exploded in my brain. I am dying anyway. Why bother being a good guy anymore? I'm going out with a bang. I pulled out my phone and dialed Claire's number. Her crisp, slightly impatient voice came through the line. "Alex, what is it now?" "I'm in the middle of prepping for an interview." I took a deep breath, lowered my voice, and said in the calmest and most unhinged tone of my life, "I'm at the coffee shop across the street from your office building. I have something for you." "What is it? Why are you being so mysterious?" "You'll know when you get here." After hanging up, I ran into a nearby toy store and bought the most realistic-looking water gun I could find. Then I stopped at a hardware store for a roll of heavy-duty duct tape. Half an hour later, Claire appeared at the coffee shop in trance, dressed in a sharp blazer and heels. She pushed the door open, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me, her perfect brows knitting together. "Alex, what the hell are you doing? I have a final round interview this afternoon." I didn't say a word. I just stood up and walked toward her. She was half a head shorter than me, tilting her face up to look at me, her eyes filled with confusion. It was now or never. I whipped the water gun out from behind my back, pressed it into her side, and clamped my other hand over her mouth. "Don't move, and don't scream, or else." I planned on saying something tough like, "Or else you'll get all wet," but the words felt lame. So I improvised. "Or else I'll cry right here." Claire just stared. Her beautiful eyes blinked, her long lashes like a pair of tiny fans. I'm pretty sure she was trying to roll her eyes. The other customers and the baristas were all staring, their expressions a mixture of shock and intense curiosity. I steeled myself, grabbed her arm, and dragged her out the door. To my surprise, she didn't fight me. The click-clack of her heels on the pavement was the only sound, like a backing track for my ridiculous plan. I shoved her into the passenger seat of my beat-up old Civic and wrapped the duct tape loosely around her wrists a couple of times as a formality. Then I slammed my foot on the gas. The car let out a pained roar and lurched forward. I had kidnapped my Claire. In my last 3 months on Earth, my life had finally gone off the rails. Chapter 2. I drove to a small apartment I'd rented on the outskirts of town with money from a part-time job in college. It was in the middle of nowhere, my secret hideout for escaping reality. Now it was my crime scene. I escorted Claire from the car. She was completely cooperative, even reminding me, "Slow down, I'm in heels. Don't want to twist an ankle." I was speechless. Was this really the right vibe for a kidnapping? Once inside, I had her sit on the sofa. I stood before her, trying my best to look menacing. "Claire Miller, you're my hostage now," I said, my voice dripping with fake malice. She surveyed the small one-bedroom apartment, nodded, and offered a critique. "Huh, it's pretty clean. Way better than your usual dump." I nearly choked. "That's not the point. The point is, you've been kidnapped. Can you please act a little scared? Give me something." Claire held up her taped wrists and wiggled them. "Oh, I'm so scared," she said, her tone as flat as if she were asking what was for dinner. I felt my dignity, a kidnapper's dignity, being challenged like never before. "So, you've chosen violence, woman." I cleared my throat, ready to proceed to the next step. "Tell me, how much money does your family have? Tell your dad to get the ransom ready." It was a classic line I'd learned from the movies. Claire thought for a moment, then answered seriously, "My parents are just working-class people. They don't have much in savings. But I did just get a scholarship payment last month. $5,000. It's in my Venmo. You want it?" I was a loss for words. I felt less like a kidnapper and more like a low-level phone scammer. The situation was painfully awkward. I looked at her calm, unfazed face. 20 years of secret love and a 3-month death sentence crashed together inside me. Frustration, anger, helplessness, it all came bubbling to the surface. My eyes started to burn. "Claire, can you please just respect the process? This is my first ever kidnapping," I yelled, my voice cracking with emotion. Claire stared at me, stunned. The playful, sarcastic look on her face slowly melted away, replaced by a flicker of shock and concern. "Alex, what's wrong? What's really going on?" She tried to pull her hands free, but the tape I'd bought was surprisingly strong. Seeing her struggle made the lump in my throat grow even bigger. I was a dying man. All I wanted was to be selfish for once, to spend my last days with the girl I loved. Why was I even failing at kidnapping? I collapsed onto the rug next to her, buried my face in my knees, and started to cry. That's right, a kidnapper, crying his eyes out in front of his hostage. I cried like a big, blubbering mess. I could hear Claire shuffling beside me, could hear her calling my name over and over. "Alex, don't cry. Are you in some kind of trouble? Just talk to me. Untie my hands first, and I'll help you figure it out." I didn't care. I just cried. I cried out all the frustration of the last 22 years and all my fear of dying. After what felt like an eternity, I felt a gentle pat on my back. I looked up. Claire had somehow managed to scoot over next to me. Since she couldn't use her hands, she was gently pressing her forehead against my back. "You idiot," she said softly. My sobs hitched. The only sound in the room was my own ragged breathing. The atmosphere suddenly shifted. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand, sniffled, and said, "I'm hungry." Claire replied, "Me too." I looked at her. "What do you want to eat?" She considered it. "Spicy buffalo wings. Extra hot." I got up, walked into the kitchen, and tied on an apron. Okay. And so, the strangest crime scene in history was born. The hostage sat comfortably on the sofa, directing the kidnapper as he sweated over the stove in the kitchen. "Alex, add more garlic powder. Mince the onions finer. Oh, and I think there's a Coke in the fridge. Can you get it for me? Make sure it's cold." As I cooked, I couldn't help but think that this plot had gone seriously off script. Chapter 3. For the next month, Claire and I lived together in that small apartment under the bizarre arrangement of kidnapper and hostage. I was in charge of cooking 3 meals a day, making whatever she craved. From spicy wings to barbecue ribs, from honey-glazed chicken to hearty beef chili, my cooking skills improved dramatically. She in turn got noticeably rounder. Her greatest joy was sitting on the couch, snacking on chips, and watching me work, occasionally offering her professional guidance. "Alex, you're a really unprofessional kidnapper," she'd say with a straight face, giving me on-the-job training. "First of all, you can't let the hostage eat better than you. You should be feeding me plain toast and water. That's how you break down my will." I nodded as I peeled an apple for her. "Good point. I'll keep that in mind. Second, this duct tape is way too loose. Look, I can get out of it with barely any effort." As she spoke, she easily slipped her hands free from the tape I'd richly put on her wrist that morning, took the apple from me, and took a huge, crunchy bite. I had nothing to say to that. "Also, you need to threaten me, intimidate me, make me feel afraid. Not ask me every day. Claire, do you want a boba tea today? I handed her the extra-large taro milk tea with extra boba I had just ordered for her and asked humbly, "So what should I have said?" She took a long sip, her eyes closing in satisfaction. Then she cleared her throat and imitated my voice, saying menacingly, "Claire Miller, tell me, what's your Wi-Fi password?" A light bulb went off in my head. I see. Thank you for the lesson. At night, we'd curl up on a couch and play video games. We'd team up in Call of Duty, her playing sniper while I provided cover, dominating the server. Whenever she got a final kill cam, she'd triumphantly prop her feet on my lap and command, "Alex, give her queen a foot rub. I am exhausted." And I'd massage her feet while saying, "Yes, your majesty. You were magnificent." Sometimes I'd ask her, "Aren't you scared, being held here by me?" Without looking up from her phone screen, she'd reply, "Terrified. I'm terrified you'll put too much salt in the food one day." There were moments when I felt like I was in a daze. This didn't feel like a kidnapping. It felt more like a clumsy confession, 20 years too late. Aside from the shadow of death that occasionally clouded my mind, I was happier than I had ever been. This was the best month of my life. Of course, there was external pressure, mainly from my parents and hers. One day, my dad called, his voice eerily calm. "Son, where are you?" My heart skipped a beat. "Dad, I'm on a graduation trip with a friend." "Oh, really? Which friend?" Just Claire Miller." I blurted out, dragging her into my lie. The line went silent for a moment. Then, my dad let out a booming laugh. "Ha ha, that's my boy. You finally grew a spine. When are you bringing your girlfriend home to meet me?" I felt my face flush. "Dad, we're just friends. I get it. His tone was full of a don't play coy with me sleaziness. "Don't worry, your mom and I will cover for you. You and Claire have fun. If you need money, just ask." He hung up before I could protest. A minute later, a text message appeared on my phone. "Your bank account, ending in XXXX, has received a deposit of $5,000. I stared at the message, deep in thought. Is this what they call a supportive father? My dad was handled. Now for Claire's parents. Claire called them and said her company was sending her on a business trip with me to another city and that they'd be back in a month. The moment they heard I was with her, they were completely at ease. In the eyes of every adult who knew us, Alex Carter was the walking definition of reliable. They would never in a million years imagine that this reliable kid was currently kidnapping their daughter. Life went on, absurdly and peacefully. I counted the days on my fingers. The doctor's 3-month deadline was getting closer and closer. I started having trouble sleeping, staring at the ceiling for hours on end. Sometimes, I would secretly watch Claire as she slept beside me. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting a soft glow on her face, her eyelashes creating faint shadows on her cheeks. How I wished I could just keep watching her like this forever. But I was out of time. I decided that before I died, I would tell her everything. Chapter 4. That night, I cooked a huge feast and even dug out a bottle of red wine from the back of the cabinet. Claire took in the spread and raised an eyebrow. "Well now, Alex, what's the special occasion?" "The Last Supper." My heart lurched, but I forced a smile. "Just celebrating our successful collaboration." She just grunted and sat down, digging in. After a few glasses of wine and several courses, I looked at her cheeks, flushed pink from the alcohol, and finally summoned my courage. "Claire." I used her first name, something I rarely did. She looked up, her eyes sparkling. "Yeah, there's something I've always wanted to tell you." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would jump out of my throat. I'm in love with you." I had practiced those 4 words for 20 years, and today they were finally out. As soon as I said them, I felt completely drained, slumping back in my chair, unable to meet her gaze. The room was dead silent. I could hear my own heart hammering in my chest. After a long moment, I heard her sigh softly. "Alex, are you an idiot?" I looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips. "If I didn't feel the same way, do you really think you could have kidnapped me for a month? A 3-year-old wouldn't have been fooled by that water gun. Everything you're thinking is written all over your face." My brain short-circuited. "Well, what does that mean?" She stood up, walked over to me, and looked down at me. "So, why did you really do all this? Don't tell me it was just to confess your feelings. This is way too stupid, even for you." I looked at her, at the face I had held in my heart for 2 decades. It was time. I pulled the diagnosis report from a drawer and handed it to her. Because of this, she took it, confused, and began to read. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to utter disbelief. Finally, she looked up, tears streaming down her face like broken pearls. Pancreatic cancer, late stage. Her voice trembled. I nodded, trying to keep my own expression calm. The doctor said I have less than 3 months. So I snapped. I didn't want to die with regrets. I wanted to be selfish just once and keep you by my side for the time I had left. Claire, I'm so sorry. Claire didn't speak. She just looked at me, her tears falling even faster. Then, she did something I never expected. She lunged forward and threw her arms around me, holding on tight. Her body was trembling as she sobbed uncontrollably. You're such a jerk. You're an idiot. Why didn't you tell me something this huge? Who do you think you are? Why did you think you had to carry this all by yourself? She pounded my back with her fists as she cried. It didn't hurt at all. In fact, it filled my heart with a warmth I'd never known. I hugged her back, burying my face in the crook of her neck. The familiar scent of her shampoo was the most comforting thing in the world. I'm sorry. It was all I could say, over and over again. We held each other and cried for a long time that night. Exhausted, we eventually fell asleep, still tangled together on the sofa. The next morning, I was woken up by the ringing of my phone. I groggily sat up, seeing Claire still asleep in my arms like a contented cat. Not wanting to wake her, I tiptoed out to the balcony to answer the call. It was an unknown number. I swiped to answer, mumbling a groggy, hello. A slightly apologetic, middle-aged man's voice came from the other end. Hello, is this Mr. Alex Carter? This is he. Hi, this is Dr. Evans from City General Hospital. I was the one who saw you for your consultation. My stomach dropped. Did my condition get worse? Dr. Evans cleared his throat, his voice even more apologetic now. Well, Mr. Carter, first of all, I need to sincerely apologize. We were conducting a system audit at the hospital recently and discovered that, well, a while back, due to a mistake made by one of our interns, a few patient diagnosis reports got mixed up. My mind went completely blank with a loud, ringing sound. I could hear Dr. Evans continuing cautiously on the other end. After double and triple checking, we confirmed that your report for late-stage pancreatic cancer actually belonged to another gentleman with the same name. As for you, you are in perfect health. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. I'm so terribly sorry, Mr. Carter, for the distress this must have caused you. The hospital will certainly be providing you with appropriate compensation. I didn't hear another word he said. The only sentence that registered was, you are in perfect health. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. I hung up the phone. I stood on the balcony, phone in my hand, the cool breeze feeling a bit chilly. I looked at the sky. It was blue. I looked at the small trees below. They were green. The world suddenly felt real and vibrant again. I wasn't dying. I wasn't going to die. After the initial wave of overwhelming joy came a tsunami of pure terror. Fear washed over me like an icy tide, drowning me in an instant. Slowly, very slowly, I turned around. I saw Claire, now awake, sitting on the sofa and looking at me with sleepy eyes. The sunlight fell on her, making her look as beautiful as a painting. And I, her kidnapper, the liar who had deceived her. How was I supposed to get out of this? I looked at her. In the most pathetic voice I had ever used in my life, I asked cautiously, So, Claire, if, and this is just a hypothetical, could we just pretend this whole month never happened? Chapter 5. The sleepiness vanished from Claire's face the moment the words left my mouth. First, she just stared for 2 seconds. Then, her beautiful eyes narrowed dangerously. I knew that look. I'd seen it when we were kids, and I stole her lollipop. The result had been me getting pinned to the ground for a full 10 minutes. A chill shot up from my feet to the top of my head. My blood ran cold. Alex, she said slowly, enunciating each syllable. What did you just say? I didn't quite hear you. Say it again. Her voice was soft, gentle even, but it sounded colder to me than a Siberian winter. I'm so dead. This is it. Game over. Alarm bells screamed in my head, and my survival instinct kicked into overdrive. No, no, no. That's not what I meant. I meant all the sad stuff, like me being sick. Let's just pretend that never happened. From now on, I'll be healthy and by your side forever. I was simultaneously terrified and impressed by my own ability to think on my feet. Claire's expression didn't change. She just stood up from the sofa and began walking toward me, one step at a time. She wasn't wearing her heels. Her bare feet were silent on the floor, making her seem like a graceful but lethal predator. I instinctively backed away. One step, two steps, until my back hit the cold railing of the balcony. There was nowhere left to run. She stopped right in front of me, tilting her head up to look me in the eye. She was so close I could smell the faint, sweet scent of her perfume and see the tear tracks still faintly visible on her cheeks. Tears she shed for me last night. A wave of immense guilt washed over me. "Alex," she said again, "do you think I'm really that easy to fool?" I shook my head frantically. "No, absolutely not." "Then do you think messing with me is fun?" I shook my head so hard it felt like it would fly off. "Never." Suddenly, she smiled. It was like a rose blooming in winter, beautiful but thorny. "I heard the phone call," she said. My jaw dropped. I felt like every organ in my body had been dunked in ice water. I was about to die right here on this balcony. For real this time. "So, you're not sick?" she asked. I managed a pained nod. "The kidnapping was fake." I nodded again. "Was saying you're in love with me fake, too?" My head shot up, and I rushed to deny it. "That part is real. As real as it gets." Claire looked at my panicked expression, and her smile grew wider. Finally, she couldn't hold it in any longer and burst out laughing. She laughed so hard she had to bend over, tears of mirth streaming from her eyes. "Ha ha! Alex, you are one of a kind. Kidnapping, a dramatic confession, a terminal illness. Huh. Were you trying to live out a cheesy romance movie this past month?" I stood there, completely dumbfounded, watching her laugh until she had to squat on the floor. This wasn't in the script. Shouldn't she be furious? Shouldn't she be hitting me? Shouldn't she be calling the cops? Why was she laughing? After a full 5 minutes, she finally calmed down, wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes as she stood up. She walked up to me, stood on her tiptoes, and pinched my cheeks, pulling them hard. Well, Alex, you've really outdone yourself. In love with me for 20 years and too scared to say a word, but the second you think you're dying, you get brave? And kidnapping? Where did you even come up with that?" My face stung, and I could only mumble an apology. "I am sorry. Claire, I'm really sorry." She snorted and let go. Too late for that." She took a step back, crossed her arms, and looked me up and down like she was appraising a piece of property. "Since you're not dying, I think it's time we settled your accounts." She started counting on her fingers. "First, you illegally detained me for a month, making me miss several important job interviews. How are you going to pay for that?" I said weakly, I can support you." She rolled her eyes. "In your dreams. Second, you toyed with my emotions and made me cry all those tears for you. How are you going to compensate me for my emotional distress?" I asked tentatively. "I could offer myself in marriage." Her cheeks turned pink. "Ugh, you're shameless." Third, and most importantly, her expression suddenly turned serious. "You, Alex Carter, belong to me now. From this day forward, your paycheck is mine, your video game accounts are mine, and you are mine. Any objections?" I stared at her, completely stunned. Happiness had struck, so suddenly it felt like a dream. I pinched my own thigh. Hard. Ouch. It hurt. This was real. I lunged forward and pulled her into a hug, so excited I could barely speak. "No objections. None. 100 times no. My queen. I'm all yours. From head to toe, I'm yours." She gasped for air, pounding on my back. "Let go. You idiot. You're suffocating me." I loosened my grip with a goofy grin, looking at her flushed cheeks and feigned anger. This whole crazy month was totally worth it. Just as we were basking in the sweet aftermath of our ordeal, my phone rang, shattering the moment. It was my dad. I answered, but before I could say a word, his booming voice erupted from the speaker. "So, when are you and Claire coming home? Her parents are already here. They said Claire's company never sent her on a business trip. They've already called the police. There are cop cars all over the street. What in the world did you do?" I froze. I slowly turned my head to meet Claire's eyes. At the exact same moment, identical looks of apocalyptic dread appeared on both our faces. The social train wreck had finally arrived. Chapter 6. When Claire and I got to my parents' apartment building, the scene was even more chaotic than I'd imagined. Two police cruisers, lights flashing, were parked out front, surrounded by a crowd of nosy neighbors. My mom and dad, along with Claire's parents, were talking frantically with two police officers. Claire's dad was the most worked up, gesturing wildly. "Officer, I'm telling you, that Alex Carter kid has always been a sneaky one. He's the one who ran off with my daughter." My dad, not one to be outdone, puffed out his chest and shot back. "Now hold on, Miller. My Alex is a good, honest kid. He'd never do something like that. It was probably your Claire who was the bad influence." Claire's mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Oh, my Claire, please be okay." My mom was trying to play peacemaker. Now, let's not jump to conclusions. The kids are probably just having a bit of fun." Watching this 5-alarm family dumpster fire unfold, my knees felt weak. I tugged on Claire's sleeve and whispered, maybe we should just run for it? Buy a couple of bus tickets and disappear to someplace where no one knows us. Claire took a deep breath and shot me a look that clearly said, "You run and you're dead." Then, she straightened her clothes, squared her shoulders, took my hand, and strode confidently toward the chaos. "Dad, Mom, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, we're back." Her voice was clear and steady. In an instant, every single head swiveled in our direction. The air froze. Claire's dad was the first to react. He rushed over, pulled Claire behind him, and pointed a trembling finger at my face. "Alex, you little punk, where did you take my daughter?" I yelped and tried to hide behind my dad. My dad promptly pushed me forward, standing tall like a protective bear. "Miller, let's all be civil here. No need to get aggressive." The two police officers approached, their expressions grim. "Alex Carter, we receive a report that you may be involved in a kidnapping. We need you to come with us to the station for questioning." My legs gave out. I almost collapsed right there on the sidewalk. This is it. I'm really going to end up in a jail cell. Just then, at that critical moment, Claire spoke up. "Officers, you've misunderstood." She stepped out from behind her father, came to my side, and, in front of everyone, linked her arm through mine. "Alex didn't kidnap me." She paused, looked up with a shy, blissful smile, and said in a voice just loud enough for everyone to hear, "We eloped because I'm pregnant." Boom! I felt an atomic bomb go off inside my skull. My dad, my mom, Claire's dad, Claire's mom, the two police officers, and the entire ring of gawking neighbors. Everyone's expression froze into a perfect replica of the painting to scream. Chapter 7. The next hour was the longest and most socially excruciating 60 minutes of my entire life. Our two families, plus two very confused police officers, were crammed in my parents' small living room for a special family tribunal. The topic, determining responsibility and subsequent actions regarding Alex Carter getting Claire Miller pregnant and convincing her to elope. I, the male lead in this drama, was kneeling on a decorative but painful wicker welcome mat. My dad sat on the sofa opposite me, holding a feather duster and looking like he was about to have an aneurysm. My mom had to physically hold him back. Claire's dad paced back and forth, muttering things like a disgrace to the family and how could I have raised such a daughter. Claire's mom and my mom sat together, sharing a box of tissues and trading laments about how they had failed their respective ancestors. The two police officers sat awkwardly on stools in the corner, clearly wanting to leave, but not knowing how. They sipped their tea and tried to be invisible. And the female lead, the director of this whole fiasco, Claire Miller, was sitting calmly on the sofa, eating a bowl of strawberries my mom had just washed and coolly assessing the situation. "Dad, Mom, what's done is done. Getting angry isn't going to solve anything," she said, casually flicking a strawberry stem into a bowl. "Alex and I are in love. The baby is innocent. We're planning on going to City Hall next month to make it official." Her dad's mustache bristled with rage. "Official? I don't approve. My daughter is not getting married in some back alley ceremony." My dad slapped his thigh. "That's right. We can't let this punk off so easy. The ring, a proper wedding, a place to live, a new car. None of that comes cheap." My eyes widened. "Dad, I'm your son." Claire nodded in agreement. "Mr. Carter is right. Those things are all necessary." She turned to me, a murderous glint in her eye. "Alex, did you hear that?" Kneeling on the mat, I nodded my head like a bobblehead doll. Yes, loud and clear. Don't you worry, my queen. I will work my fingers to the bone to give you the wedding you deserve. Seeing our united front, the four parents seemed to calm down a bit. The situation was what it was. It was better to plan for the future than to stay angry. And just like that, the tribunal turned into a wedding planning session. They debated everything from the budget and the venue to what to name their future grandchild. I watched this bizarrely harmonious scene unfold and gave Claire a silent thumbs up. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. She had used one lie to diffuse a situation that could have landed me in prison. After seeing Claire's parents and the police officers out, my dad closed the door and let out a long sigh. He walked over to me, still kneeling on the mat. "Get up," he said quietly. I scrambled to my feet, my knees aching. "All right, what really happened?" My dad asked, sitting down and lighting a cigarette. "And don't give me that pregnancy nonsense. I know you. You wouldn't have the guts." I glanced nervously at Claire. She gave me a look that said, "Confess everything. It's your only hope." So, I took a deep breath and told them everything that had happened over the past month. From the fake diagnosis to the kidnapping, all the way to the hospital's phone call. I spoke until my mouth was dry, my heart pounding the entire time. My parents listened, their expressions shifting from shock to anger to a strange look of trying not to laugh. When I finished, a long silence filled the room. My dad smoked his entire cigarette, stubbed it out in the ashtray, and looked at me with a complicated expression. Finally, after a long pause, he said 3 words. "Nice work, son." I was stunned. My mom, who had been on the verge of tears moments before, now came over and patted my shoulder. "You've grown up, Alex," she said, beaming. "You finally learned to go after a girl, even if your methods were a little unconventional." My world was spinning. Are my parents way too progressive? Chapter 8. And so, the great kidnapping elopement crisis came to a bizarre and peaceful conclusion. The next day, with the necessary paperwork my dad gave me, Claire and I walked into City Hall. When we came out, we each had a crisp, new certificate in our hands. I stared at the photo on our marriage license, at our 2 smiling faces side by side, and felt like I was dreaming. Me, Alex Carter, a completely unremarkable coward for 22 years, had just gotten married after a case of mistaken identity and a failed kidnapping. And I'd married the girl I'd been in love with for 2 decades. Life was stranger than fiction. "What are you smiling at, Dork?" Claire nudged me with her elbow. I snapped out of it and grinned, tucking the license securely into my jacket pocket. "So where to now, wife?" The word rolled off my tongue with surprising ease. Claire blushed and shot me a glare. "Who's your wife?" "You will address me as Ms. Miller." "Okay, wife." "No problem, wife." She sighed, defeated. "We're going to the hospital." I blinked. "Why?" "You said the pregnancy was a lie to get our parents off our backs, right?" She rolled her eyes. "Who said anything about an OBGYN? I'm talking about going to see a certain Dr. Evans. We need to properly thank him." She said the word thank with a very pointed emphasis. I understood immediately. It was payback time. My energy surged. Yes, absolutely. If it wasn't for him mixing up the reports, none of this would have happened. I almost went to jail. We were in perfect agreement. We hailed a cab and headed straight for City General Hospital. After asking at the front desk, we marched, full of righteous anger, to Dr. Evans's office. He was sitting at his desk reviewing a file. He looked up when we entered, a bit startled. When he recognized me, his face immediately flooded with guilt. "Oh, Mr. Carter, you're here." He stood up, wringing his hands nervously. I cleared my throat, preparing to unleash a tirade about his catastrophic incompetence. But Claire beat me to it. She stepped forward, pulled a thick envelope from her purse, and pressed it into Dr. Evans's hands with a brilliant smile. "Dr. Evans, thank you so much." Both the doctor and I were completely baffled. Dr. Evans stared at the envelope in his hands. Who is this?" "I'm his wife," Claire said, linking her arm through mine and beaming. "Dr. Evans, you're our matchmaker. If it weren't for your little mix-up, this blockhead here would probably never have worked up the nerve to tell me how he felt. We just got our marriage license yesterday, and we wanted to come by and bring you some celebratory chocolates to thank you for your divine intervention." She then produced a large bag of gourmet chocolates from her purse and pushed it into his arms. Dr. Evans stood there, holding the envelope and the chocolates, completely petrified. His expression shifted from guilt to confusion to shock, and finally to the relieved look of a man who realized he had accidentally done a very good deed. He looked between the two of us and shook my hand excitedly. "Oh, congratulations. So that's what happened. I was so worried about you, young man. You looked like you had lost all hope. But now all's well that ends well. A happy ending. I'm so relieved." I watched this heartwarming scene of doctor-patient harmony unfold, my facial muscles twitching uncontrollably. "Honey, your brain works in ways I will never comprehend." After we left the hospital, I finally had to ask, "Why did you give him money? Shouldn't we have sued him for emotional distress?" Claire held up our marriage license and raised a triumphant eyebrow. "And could a lawsuit have gotten me this?" "Alex, the process was a little bumpy, but the destination is pretty great, isn't it? Sometimes, life needs a little chaos and insanity to push us in the right direction." She looked at me, her eyes sparkling. However, her tone shifted and her gaze turned dangerous again. "I haven't forgotten about the kidnapping. That's still on your record. When we get home, you're kneeling on that wicker mat again." I looked at her pretending to be angry, but my heart felt like it was overflowing with honey. I smiled, stood at attention, and gave her a sharp salute. "Yes, my queen." The sun was shining, and a gentle breeze was blowing. I took her hand, and we started walking home. I knew that my ordinary, unremarkable life was, from this day forward, going to be filled with chaos, arguments, and an infinite amount of sweetness and surprise. Right. First thing to do when we get home, hide that welcome mat.